Welcome back to a different kind of doula with Colleen, Maureen, and I'm Kathleen. And today we are so excited to bring a guest, Dr. Qwynn Galloway Salazar. And she is an Army veteran, an end-of-life doula educator, and the founder of In Their Honor. We are so happy to have you here. We'd love just to hear a synopsis of what brought you to this work.
Oh my gosh, first and foremost, thank you all for having me here to spend some time with you ladies tonight. I'm looking at all three of your names and I'm like, it's all three of the Eames that's going on. So when you ask me what brought me to this work, quite honestly, it started, sometimes we can sit and say, something started in my childhood. And so I'll start it way back from that point, where I was introduced and really had a keen interest at a young age about death and dying.
Mm-hmm.
And I was about 7 and I had a girlfriend who was 8 at the time. And we both had this interest in mortuary work, right? Where we played this game, 7 and 8-year-olds, we played this game called Corpse. And one of us played as the mortician and the other one was the decedent, and we did each other's makeup and just really created this scenario-based game at such a young age where we learned how to care for the dead.
Yeah.
Long story short, following my time in the military, I reconnected with that friend, and I was exploring going to mortuary science school. And she was actually starting her career as a social worker in hospice care. So it's interesting how the universe selected us at a very young age to start in this space of death and dying. So bringing it more into, relevance as to how I got to this place as a doula. So in 2021, I had the great opportunity to have a mentor, and what I like to call her, she was my shiro, journeying alongside of me towards the end of my doctoral journey. Her name was Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas, and at the time, Kate was facing a life-limiting illness. Kate was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and she was a woman veteran researcher. She was a Marine. She was fierce as all get out, and every opportunity that I have to talk about Kate, to keep her legacy alive, I do that. And I remember having these conversations during the pandemic with Kate because there was so much death and so much dying that was happening across the nation. And it was stirring in my spirit as it related to veterans. And one of the questions that came up in my mind was, how does a veteran's military experience impact them at the end of life? Mm-hmm. And I remember having these rich conversations with Kate. And I remember saying to Kate, for all of these years that I've been in the behavioral health space, supporting service members, veterans, and their families, why is the universe leaning me towards end of life work? And Kate would say to me, Qwynn, I want you to remember, not all who wander are lost. That every moment that you've had along your journey in the last 20 plus years working with our military and veteran communities has led you to this moment. And so with that, it was like a week later that it was like a light bulb went off, and I decided I'm gonna go full steam into this thing. And I started doing the research and realized that, hey, there's this role called an end-of-life doula or a death doula. And I looked at it and I looked at a few other trainings and I'm like, this speaks to my soul. And so I pursued it. And as I was pursuing it, I was having these conversations with Kate. I knew Kate was dying. And I was really tuned into how can I make this a better place for veterans like Kate that are journeying upon their end of life. And here I am. Wow. So Washington was my first state. Right, so I'll jump into that. Washington was the first state that heard about the work that I was doing, and I partnered with the State Department of Veteran Affairs in Washington and hosted 2 trainings. And there was such great feedback from those trainings that I just kept going. And it has afforded me the opportunity to be on various national stages talking about end of life experiences for veterans and their caregivers and loved ones.
How, explain to us how for veterans at end of life. I mean, so how a doula could, if they are working with a veteran, how they can be of the most service and impact to that veteran.
Yeah. So as a doula, I think the way that we can be the most supportive is being a companion, right? Stepping into a space and not having to understand everything that there is to know about military culture, but understanding just a little bit of each war generation's, their era, and what happened during that era. So thinking about Vietnam veterans, which is one of the largest populations in the veteran community, thinking about the fact that when they came home, they weren't welcomed home.
No.
And many of them were unable to share their stories throughout the course of their lives. Many of them isolated, many of them didn't share, many of them have strained relationships with their families, strained relationships with society as a whole. Then you get to journey with them towards the end of their life, and you show up in a way that allows them to have a safe space where they can share some of those experiences. Some of the skills we learn as doulas transcend where you're practicing that active listening, right? Like you're truly just sitting and absorbing what that veteran is sharing with you. You're allowing them to know that you're that safe space for them. You're that companion. You're that person where they can talk about any of their regrets, any unfinished business, any guilt, any forgiveness that needs to happen. You're that one that's able to open up those channels to help them find closure at the end of their lives.
As you say that, I'm just going to jump in. I know my Kathleen and Colleen have heard this story many times. I was a hospice volunteer. I'd been a hospice nurse, but I ended up volunteering for hospice. And there was a gentleman that was a World War II vet. He did not want me there. Every week that I came, he tried to send me away, and I said, well, I'm just here, but I'd pepper in just, a little life question here and there. And before he ran off to his room to take his nap for the 4-hour period that I was there. But, after about 9 or 10 weeks of just showing up consistently and just being with him, he started, I asked a question one day and I don't even remember, but he started opening up about his experience during the war. And as the weeks passed, over the next number of weeks, he started just sharing his. And I said, have you shared this with your family? No, I can't. He was, afraid he had killed innocent people, all of this. And I kept encouraging him. And one day I went to for my time with him, and his wife opened the door and said, oh my gosh, I've been married to him for 55 years and never heard. She said he started sharing and he just unloaded everything before he died. And, it's just, I still get chills thinking about it, because walking around with that kind of burden and regret and carrying it so deep in your soul, I just can't even imagine it.
Mm-hmm. And it's a story that I've heard, I've, of course, not the same exact story, but components of the story you shared, I've heard several times. And it's that thing where our veterans who have served in combat, and even some that have served stateside that have had traumatic experiences, they share this PG-13 version with their family to protect their family and to keep their family safe, because sometimes it's hard to let your family know what happened, right? And then what happens is there's really this rated R version of self.
Oh,
When you're a doula and you're able to build this level of trust and rapport where that vulnerability is able to come through and allow that veteran to just kind of unpack, right? Unpack those burdens, unpack that guilt. What a gift. You know, and sometimes I tell, I love our doulas, but having the opportunity to work with other end-of-life professionals, I often say to them, put your clipboard down.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Put your clipboard down for a minute because you're so focused on, prognosis and diagnosis and care and pain and just all of the things that come with being a part of a care team. But truly hear their story because it impacts the type of care that you're going to give long term.
Qwynn, and Maureen, as you were talking, oh my gosh, so many scenarios just went through my head. I remember in my 30s, I sat with a friend of mine who'd come back from the Vietnam War and lost a dear friend, died in his arms. He was a medic. And we closed the restaurant down. I couldn't move. I was so riveted by it. And then I had to go, being a child of the Vietnam War, I had to go and lock myself in my room and read about what was going on based on what he told me. But I was going to ask you, Qwynn, I mean, you're talking about the story and it seems like it's so powerful. And my real interest as a doula is in life review and legacy.
Yes.
And you're talking about that, but not all vets, just like you said, they don't give the R rated. But what happens, because our collective saw what happens when it's not shared with a colleague of ours whose husband died, who was a vet, and he hadn't shared a lot until very last. And you could almost see that that's what he was working through when we were vigiling, right? I mean, Maureen and Kathleen, we've talked
Yes.
before. But I just was wondering what your thoughts were on, well, you kind of said it, but the doula has to feel comfortable with that and
Yeah.
allow for that space.
Allow for that space. And as you walk into, we're going to start seeing more veterans, right? That's just the reality. We're going to start seeing more veterans in our care.
Yes.
You walk into a space with a veteran, let them guide you, right? They are the expert of their lived experiences. We're not. We're there to help facilitate how everything is going to go. But let's walk in with no agenda. Our biases, our stereotypes, our thought of what was, put it to the side. Just have a clear understanding of what some of their general experiences as a whole were like. Once again, how our Vietnam veterans came home. You think about our Korean War veterans, they were the forgotten war, right? I had the opportunity to journey with the Korean War veteran last year. And one of the things that he loved to do was to meet up with me and share stories about Frank Sinatra in his time and share all of the awards that he received. But for so many years, he felt forgotten. He felt forgotten. And really all he wanted to do was hear that he mattered and that his service mattered. And I remember him saying to me, Qwynn, it's not that I'm afraid of being dead. I'm afraid of dying, and I'm afraid of dying with all of these feelings that I've had for all of these years and not having a place to lay them down.
And wow.
That's powerful.
I think that goes back to the life review. I think life review is one of the most powerful tools that doulas can use. It's what unlocks these stories and allows them to be shared, given them time. I was really fortunate during my nursing career to work with a Vietnam vet that was having a plant. And so he ended up being in the ICU on a balloon pump for a couple months to assist his heart pumping. But he, right from the beginning, he told us, okay, when you come in at night, flip the light on and make lots of noise because I come up swinging, from his time in the foxholes. And so I loved working the night shift. I didn't always work the night shift, but when I did, his name was Barney. I'll never forget him. but he shared some pretty R-rated stories with us. I think he felt safe with the nurses because we'd just sit there and listen. But, in the daytime, we were too busy. We didn't have the time. But at nighttime, we had the time to listen to his stories. And they were powerful. But it's that life review,
Yeah.
so powerful. Colleen, the work you do is so important.
No, it's one of my big areas that I, you know,
And
yeah,
it's a life review on their agenda and their timeline. Like
right.
they want to share it. Yeah. That's
And
what's
and
important.
a caveat to that is you also have some veterans who their military experience really didn't shape. They may
Yeah.
feel like it didn't shape a part of their identity, their overall identity, and that's okay too, right? So meeting them where they are, you're gonna find some veterans that, totally identify with their service and it is ingrained in every fiber of their being. And then you may meet some veterans that say, yeah, I served, but okay, I did what I was supposed to do next. And that's okay too. That's okay too.
Mhm.
The way
Uh,
something impacts one person is different and everybody's experience is different, especially I would imagine in service.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things, that I love to share with doulas, especially because I think for some end of life professionals that have been working in the space with veterans, they have a little bit of an understanding of this. But to our doulas who are newer into this space, saying the words, thank you for your service. So that I'm going to be a myth buster with the term
Yeah.
for your service and say to you, please be careful when you say thank you for your service, because it may resonate in a negative way for some veterans. So be mindful when you say, I understand your intentions are really good and meaningful when you say thank you for your service. But if you're looking at a veteran who may have had to kill someone in service,
Mhm.
that may trigger them,
Mhm.
right? That term may trigger them. There may be some underlying stuff when you say thank you for your service. So, instead of that, or even when you say thank you for your service, you may say, I would love to learn more about your role in the military if you're willing to share. And when you learn more about what they did, then if you feel that it's okay, then you can slide in a thank you for your service,
Mhm.
right? But I would truly say, be mindful jumping in and saying thank you for your service. I had another doula say to me about a year ago, I said to a veteran that I was working with, thank you for their service. And he screamed at me and he said, you don't even know what I did.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she thought she was doing the right thing, right? That's the patriotic thing to do, is to thank a veteran for their service. But you want to learn a little bit more about their story. You want to listen in to hear about what their experiences were, if they're willing to share.
I'm so glad you shared that because I just saw that on TV
Really?
where they had a Memorial Day service for the older vets,
Mhm.
and this one younger vet said one of the things the public needs to know is that they didn't go into the detail that you went into, but they said you don't say to them, thank you for your service. And I thought to myself, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the practical things. I was in San Diego a few weeks ago, and I got into the airport, and there was an older gentleman with a Vietnam veteran hat on. And I saw him walking, and he was on the side of me, and I said, welcome home.
Yeah.
Can I carry your luggage for you? And he paused and he just looked at me. That was my way of saying thank you for your service without saying thank you for your service, but also acknowledging that I understood and I empathized with his generation's experiences in coming home. And it was such a beautiful moment that I'll never forget that. in an airport where many of them were spat upon when they arrived back home. I was able to say to him, "Can I carry your luggage?" Did I share with him that I was a veteran? No. But in that moment, we were true Americans in an airport. And I was willing to share with him that humanistic experience of being kind and thanking him in a way for his service. So just a tidbit.
You know, you're triggering me all over the place here with what doulas do. And I'm so, that you're talking about compassion, and it's something that is missing. Doulas do this. We say we are compassionate. It is missing in our culture,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, we need, I've seen recently a program about heading toward a spiritual reckoning with each other, no matter what you believe or think. But, you know, you're talking about compassion. That compassion came out.
Yeah, compassion. One of my favorite researchers, his name is Dr. Alan Kelleher, and Alan is out of Austria, and he created the framework called compassionate communities. I absolutely adore that framework because within that framework, doulas is so perfectly situated to provide that level of compassion, but to also be able at some level to share with our communities, raising awareness for whatever population we're serving, right? And one of the main tenets of the compassionate communities is everyone has a role in end of life, everyone, right? So just thinking as simple as this, if you're living next door to a veteran and you know that that veteran is aging, or you know that they're coming upon the end of their life, what are practical things that you can do to show up? You can cut lawn, you can go in and help with housework, you can go pick up meals, you can run a meal train, you can sit and do an oral history interview, a life review. You can have your Boy Scouts or your Girl Scouts come in and just sit, right? And just sit and show up so that veteran feels less alone, right? There's so many things as communities that we can do just to be compassionate. It doesn't take degrees. It doesn't take certifications. It just takes the willingness to say, I care. And here's a bit of what I can do to make this world a better place. One of the things, I have a 13-year-old daughter. I have a few daughters, but specifically this one. She was born on Veterans Day. And she paints. And what she does for me now is she paints memory boxes for my veterans.
Oh,
Simple as that, right? How simple is it for us to go to our local Hobby Lobby or Michael's and pick up a box? I have one actually right here on my desk that she's working on. Pick up a simple box and paint it and be able to send it off to a veteran so that they can put little treasures in here as a part of their legacy.
beautiful.
Wow.
That
So
is
powerful.
Powerful.
And so when I
go
think about our doulas, there's so many ways that we can stand in this space and be of support for that veteran, and also their caregivers and their loved ones. You know, we talk about stoicism and just that pride that our veterans have throughout the course of their lives, and it even shows up even more so towards the end. Their families have, their loved ones and their caregivers have that same level of stoicism, right? They have experiences too that they want to share. And however we can stand in the space with them as doulas and support them, that's really important. We build when we're able to connect with those loved ones, it even opens up a greater level of trust with that veteran when he or she or they know that their loved one or their caregiver is also being cared for, because that's the number one person they're worried about.
Yeah.
They're not primarily worried about themselves. They're worried about those that they're going to leave behind.
As we're getting near the end, but there's one thing I wanted to ask. What we talk about what we should do as a doula, but are there things that are better not to do with veterans that maybe doulas should know about?
Yeah, let's see. So one of you all mentioned the light, right? Like just thinking about the
Oh, yeah.
environment and the spaces that we're in with that veteran towards their end of their lives. Being mindful of light and sensations to light. Being mindful of touch. When you think about some veterans who have experienced trauma, whether it's trauma on the combat field or trauma related to military sexual trauma, touch can become a challenge. I think it's important when you begin working with your veteran to really sit down and have end of life wishes and make a list and even put it in a frame of what they would and what they don't want in their space. Right? Because as they become less and less verbal, it's hard for them to verbalize what's okay for them. Trying to limit what triggers or what activates them at the end of life is so important. So while they're in that phase of being able to verbalize those wants and those not so wants, put it in a frame and put it in the room so that people who are visiting them know what's okay and what's not okay for them.
Gosh, what a great tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's universal. I think we can do that with all of our clients,
Yes.
right? We can definitely do that with everyone that we serve and support. At the end of life, it's really connecting with them because that's their experience. It's not our experience, it's their experience. And being able to say to them, well, what's not okay for you? It's huge.
Right.
It's huge.
And I don't think we always think to ask that, especially of veterans, if we don't want to step on toes or things. So thank you for sharing. We are nearing the end of our report together. And I would like to know, would you like to share how people can reach you, get in touch with you, or find out about the work you do?
Yes, absolutely. So you can find, if you go to my website, which is intheirhonor.info, you can find me there. I can plug, let me go into this chat. I'm going to plug in my email. You can definitely reach out to me there as well. I'm on LinkedIn and you can find me there. And quite honestly, any way that I can be of support, that's what I'm here to do. It has truly been, I'm just putting my name down in the chat as well, if you're trying to find me on LinkedIn. It's truly been an honor to be able to support just communities and having these conversations. And that's where it starts. It starts with first having these really difficult conversations. And from there, we're able to have a sense of collective wisdom together on how can we support our nation's heroes where we live and where we play and where our lives are built around. Because what happens here in Atlanta, Georgia, may not be prescriptive for what happens in Seattle, Washington, right? Mm-hmm. But when we begin to have these dialogues to open up these channels of conversation, we're able to bring the right people, right allies around the table to address what the topic is and find ways together to figure out what those solutions are to support our nation's heroes.
Gosh. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, it's been my honor.
It has been our honor to have you. So thank you. And just to tie this up, we're a different kind of doula on the Win-Win Women channel. And you can find us Challenging Conversations on Facebook. So we just really appreciate your being here and can't wait to learn more from you, Qwynn. So thank you.
Thank you.